So Prune is going to be an upcoming 4-star Anemo Catalyst user. She's expected to be one of the best Anemo off-field supports and sort of sub-DPSs. Her weapon options and even what she provides in general can be a little complicated. So in this video, I'll just be helping you guys understand what does she need on a weapon, and then also I'll rank all of the catalysts in the game in a tier list based around which are going to be the best to use on her. Alright, so let's start off with her weapon requirements first. As I said before, she's going to be an Anemo sub-DPS slash support. Her supportive capabilities are mainly just going to be her providing attack to your teammates, and that's going to basically just scale with her attack. So the more attack you have on her, the more attack she's going to provide to your teammates, basically. Also, for you to fully max out her attack potential, you'll need to have 4,500 attack on her, which is pretty huge. That's going to be pretty hard to achieve, so that simply means you'll need a lot of attack on her, and it's going to be pretty hard to like overcap on attack for her. On the other hand, she's also a sub DPS, and she does deal damage off field, but her damage is really going to be subpar in general, so she's mainly a support in my opinion. Her damage is just going to scale normally with attack and crit and all those stuff, but her damage overall is not going to be something big. So the best strategy for you to build Prune in general is going to be for you to focus on her attack. So you'll need to get obviously high base attack weapons or just attack percentage in general and stuff like that. Just anything that can buff her attack is going to be pretty good, since it's going to buff your damage and also the most important thing about her, which is her supportive capabilities. The next thing you want to go for is going to be energy recharge. Her buffs are going to come from you using her elemental burst, so you'd want to keep it consistent. So you definitely want to have enough energy recharge on her. Maybe 130, 150 is going to be enough. You can do it from some substats, but if you can get it from your weapon, that's also going to be pretty good. Then after that, you can go for like the damage options, like just the crit rate and crit damage and stuff like that. But as I said before, they're really not going to be preferred. Her damage in general is just not going to be all of that. So crit rate and crit damage are fine, but they're definitely not the things you want to go for on a weapon. But yeah, knowing that, let's move on to the tier list and rank the best weapons for Prune. Alright, so first of all, starting off with the 3-star options. Unfortunately, as I explained before, she does need attack and a lot of it. So 3-star weapons are going to have pretty low base attack, and in general, they're just not going to be the best options for her. Magic Guide, just Elemental Mastery, so it's D tier. Thrill and Tails can be pretty decent, just simply because it's a supportive weapon. So it can give attack to the next character you get after you, which fits her pretty well. You know, she's an attack buffer, so you're usually playing her with characters who can appreciate attack, so getting more attack from the weapon is going to be pretty decent. So honestly, I'd put a B tier. It's not a bad weapon, but just not for Prune herself. It's just like as a supportive weapon, which is fine. As I said before, she's mainly a support. Otherworldly Story is just energy recharge. As I said before, it's pretty decent, so I just keep it at B tier 2. Energy recharge can be a little useful for her. I keep it low B tier, but it's definitely a useful weapon, I guess. Emerald Orb is just elemental mastery, so it's D tier. Twin Nephrite is just gonna be crit rate, so it's usable, but it's definitely not the best. It's going to C tier, and then finally Ember Bed is just gonna be elemental mastery, so I put it D tier. Alright, so now moving on to the 4-star options. Usually they're going to be just much better because they're going to have higher base attacks, but some of them are still not the greatest. So starting off with the Favonius is going to be an energy recharge weapon, but the Favonius is always going to be good for any support, honestly, because it's also going to give your whole team energy and also give Prune energy, which is pretty good. So honestly, I'd say it's an S tier weapon. Just, you know, you cannot just go wrong with the Favonius on a support character. She can just always help her team, make the rotations better. If a character lacks a little bit of energy recharge, she's going to help him. So yeah, even though it's not the perfect weapon for Prune herself, it's a good supportive weapon, so I'll put that S tier. The Witset is just going to be crit damage as a substat, which is not the greatest. And then when you take the field, it's a gamble basically, so you can get either attack, a 60% attack, which is super good, but the other two buffs are going to be basically useless on Prune. It's either elemental damage or elemental mastery, which are not the best, so I keep it at B tier too. Low B tier just because it can be useful. The crit damage is also useful a little bit, I guess also the elemental damage, but in general it's not the best weapon you'd want to use. Sacrificial Fragment is just elemental mastery and a low base attack for 4 stars, so I just keep it at D tier. Royal Grimoire is just an attack weapon, also a bit of a high base attack for a 4-star weapon. Substat is kind of useless, but I keep it at low A tier. I think it's probably low A tier weapon just as like an attack stat stick. Solar Pearl is just crit rate, probably just like C tier for the crit rate. Prototype Amber is just HP, so it's going D tier. Mapamare is just elemental mastery, like D tier. The Blackcliff is going to be crit damage. You can get some attack after defeating an enemy, but I think for it to even activate, you'll need to beat an enemy with Prune herself, which is usually not happening. So I just keep it as C tier for the crit damage, but usually it's not like a great weapon. Eye of Perception is just going to be attack, but it's going to have a low base attack. I'll probably keep it at B tier. Wine and Song is just going to be energy recharge, and it can also give you some attack from the passive just by you sprinting, which is going to be pretty decent. It's also going to have a high base attack for a 4-star, so I think it's definitely a decent weapon on her. I keep it at A tier too. Frostbearer is just going to be attack, but it's going to have an average base base attack, so I keep it at B tier instead of A tier. It's a little bit worse than the rest. Dodoco Tails, if you have it, is gonna have a low base attack for 4-star, but it's gonna give you a huge attack substat, and then also more attack from the passive, especially if you have it R5, which you should. It's gonna give you 36% attack. So in total, it's just gonna give you like what, 80% attack or something like that. But honestly, I still don't like it as much. I still prefer those weapons at A tier, just simply because the base attack is too low. So any other attack, buffs that you get from your artifacts or any other sources are not gonna scale as well. So in general, I think it's not a good deal. I'd still keep it at B tier. I think it's definitely usable, but I still prefer weapons with a bit of a higher base attack. Action Ring is just going to be energy recharge, a high base attack, and that's pretty much it. I keep it at B tier just for the energy recharge, but it's definitely not the greatest weapon you'd want to use. Oathsworn Eye is going to have a high base attack for a 4-star and then also an attack substat, which is pretty perfect. And it's also going to give you energy recharge from the passive, which is pretty good. So honestly, I'd keep it at the top of A tier. I think it definitely deserves it. I wouldn't put it at S tier just because the base attack is still like a 4-star base attack. In general, it's just much better to get weapons with a high base attack like 5 stars, because as I said before, you're gonna have a lot of attack buffs from your artifacts and stuff like that, and they're all just gonna scale much better if you have just better base attack. So yeah, I'd keep it at super high A tier, and you can argue it's like a low S tier weapon, but it's definitely pretty good. Wandering Even Star is just gonna be elemental mastery, and it can give you some attack, but it's not gonna be that much. Probably C tier. For fulfillment, it's just energy recharge, but it's gonna make you lose attack actually, which is terrible for Prune, so I just put it at D tier. Sacrificial is just gonna be crit rate and then a super low base attack and then some HP. Honestly, even though it has crit rate, I still keep it at D tier. You definitely don't want to use it. Flow Purity is gonna have a high base attack and then also an attack substat. Passive is kind of whatever, but I keep it low A tier. I think it's pretty decent for her, just like a 4-star attack stat stick. So yeah, Battle of the Boundless Blue, high base attack and then energy recharge. The rest of the passive is kind of useless. I keep it at B tier. Ash Graven Drinking Horn is just gonna be HP, so it's just D tier. Wave Riding Whirl is just gonna be energy recharge, but then a very low base attack. The rest of the passive is whatever. Honestly, even though it does give you energy recharge, I think it's a bit too much. It just has like a high substat and a low base attack, which is not what you're looking for on Prune. So I'll probably keep it as C tier just for the energy recharge, but even if you're going for an energy recharge weapon, it's probably not the one. Ring of Yakshay is just HP, just D tier. Etherlight Spin the Loot, energy recharge, and then just an average base attack, which is much better than the Waver in the World. So I keep it low B tier. It's definitely more usable. It's just more balanced, which is just better. Black Marrow Lantern, low base attack and then elemental mastery, just D tier. Dawn in Frost is gonna be average base attack and then crit damage. The rest of the passives, whatever, just probably C tier. Now, moving on to the 5-star options, as I said, they're usually just going to be better, simply because they're going to have super high base attacks, and everything else you build, just like the whole attack buffs, are just going to scale better, so it's just going to result in much better value in general. So Skyward Atlas is just going to be super high base attack, and then also an attack substat, which is pretty good. The rest of the passive is just whatever, but just adds an attack stat stick. It's probably the best you can get, so I'd keep it at S tier, honestly. I think it's probably just not much better that you can get. Last Prayer is going to be an average base attack for a 5-star, but still pretty high, higher than any 4-star weapon. Crit rate as a substat, which is not the best. The rest of the passive is also not the best. It's just elemental damage, but it's still gonna be pretty good just for the high base attack. So I keep a low A tier, honestly. Memory of Dust is just gonna be the attack stat stick, so it's just gonna be average base attack for a 5-star, and then also an attack substat, which is pretty good, and it can give you more attack from the passive, which is super good. I'd also keep it as an S tier weapon. I think it's definitely pretty good. Jadefall Splendor is just gonna be HP, unfortunately. The rest of the passive is also gonna be kind of useless, but just for the base attack, I don't think it's gonna be that terrible, honestly. So I keep it low B tier, even though the weapon itself doesn't give you anything. As I said before, just having 608 base attack instead of like 500, that extra 100 is just gonna scale much better, because your Sands, for example, is gonna give you 40% attack, so that 40% is gonna be based on your base attack. Same thing with your Goblet, same thing with your substats, same thing with your Ascension. So overall, it's still gonna rival those weapons at B tier, even though some of them are straight up gonna give you a lot of attack. 5-star weapons are still going to be pretty valuable for characters like these. Everlasting Moonglow, same thing basically, so I just keep it next to it at B tier. Gyara's Verity is just going to be crit damage and the same base attack. I keep it at A tier just because crit damage is a bit more valuable for damage, but in general it's the same thing. It's just an attack stat stick. 1,000 Floating Dreams is a little worse. It's just going to be elemental mastery, and even the base attack is low for a 5-star weapon, but even that low base attack is still higher than any 4-star base attack, so I'm still going to keep it at C tier. That's probably the right place for it. It's still not gonna be too terrible. So Remembrance, super high base attack, and then a crit damage substat, which is pretty good. The rest of the passive is just doesn't matter. But just for the super high base attack, I'd keep it a high A tier. I think it's probably a decent weapon. Cash flow supervision is basically the same thing. It's just gonna give you crit rate instead of crit damage, and also an extra 16% attack from the passive, so I think it deserves low S tier, honestly. It's definitely pretty decent. Some of the Eternal Flow is not that great, honestly. It's gonna give you crit damage, but the base attack is not that high, especially for a 5-star. So I keep it either high C tier or low B tier. I keep it low B tier. I think it's fine, but it's definitely not the greatest weapon you'd want to use. Crane's Echoing Call, also, you know, that's basically everything you need. Super high base attack, a small attack substat, but that super high base attack is gonna matter a lot. So I'd keep it at mid S tier. I think it's definitely one of the best weapons you can use on her too. Surf's Up is the exact same thing as the Tome of the Eternal Flow, so I'll just keep it right next to a B tier. Starcaller's Watch is gonna be Elemental Mastery. Unfortunately, that's gonna be the greatest, but it's not terrible, so I'll just keep it at C tier too. Same thing with the Sunny Morning Sleeping, just C tier. They're also the same as the Thousand Floats and Dreams. Vivid Notion is also gonna be pretty good. It's gonna have a high base attack and then a crit damage substat, which is not fully useless. And it's gonna give you 28% from the passive just by equipping this weapon, which is super good. The rest of the passive doesn't matter, but I think that's enough for it to earn like an S tier spot. I keep it a low S tier too, just because the substat is not the greatest, but it's still gonna be pretty good. Nightweaver's Looking Glass, also the same, just Elemental Mastery and low base attack, so it's going C tier. Reliquary of Truth, same thing as the Tome of the Eternal Flow, so it's going low B tier. Same thing as the Nocturne's Current Coal. And then finally, Nicole's weapon is going to be one of the best options you can use. Super high base attack and then also an attack substat. That's always going to be pretty good. Also more attack from the passive. Just by equipping this weapon, you get a 12% attack increase. So if you for some reason pull this weapon for Nicole and you're not using it on her, then you can definitely use it on Prune. I just keep it at top of S tier for sure. But yeah, I think she's definitely not free to play friendly in terms of like weapons. But in general, I don't think it matters that much. Basically everything you need for her is just attack. So you probably can manage to get enough, or at least close to enough attack without even having it like the greatest weapon. But in terms of weapons, she's definitely not free to play friendly when it comes to her like best options. But yeah, that was the video, guys. Tell me what weapons you guys are going to be using. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. See you guys next video. Peace.